Okay, I think we'll get started. There are always some people trickling in. Hi, I'm Janice Gabrielov. I hope you had a good weekend. We have some great sessions planned this week for you. Today, we're extraordinarily fortunate to have Lisa Bloom from Talent Development and Learning, as well as our colleague Alison Finney from MSIP Innovation Partners, to really discuss with you about how to pitch for career success. And they'll be bringing different perspectives to the table to facilitate and provide you with a toolkit, if you will, of some strategies and techniques in this regard. We're going to start with Lisa's presentation, and I've got to know Lisa through another program that we've established called the LEAD program, which is a leadership program for junior faculty. For those of you who might want to apply for that, we have an annual application process for that very competitive program. And I've learned a tremendous amount from Lisa and her expertise in organizational development, where she serves in that capacity in the talent development and learning, and also runs our Leaders Lab. So many of our faculty have already tremendously benefited from her expertise and insights. So I'm sure that she will be kicking it off, providing some pretty interesting information for you to digest. That will be followed by our colleague from MSIP, who equally will provide you with some keen insights based on her perspective and background in understanding science and how to position yourself in the world of business. So, thank you so much. I'm going to be stepping out because I'm running to another computer. My laptop has died to do chatting on our live stream. So, enjoy.
Thanks so much, Janice. So thank you, and I'm very honored to be here today with all of you to talk about positioning yourself for career success. I was actually told that it's better if I stand behind the podium. It may have something to do with the camera, so I'm going to try as much as possible, and also for the microphone, but I may find myself going astray. So I'm going to talk to you today about positioning yourself for career success. And I'm going to give you some key, as Janice alluded to, strategies to help you do that and to really become someone who can confidently network and be a proponent for yourself and get what you want out of life and out of your career. And I want to start with a story about myself. So I am the little girl all the way to the right. Growing up, I always wanted to be a physician. My father was a physician. I excelled in math and science. I loved anatomy and physiology. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind I was going to be a physician. That is until first semester freshman year, when I was, quote unquote, weeded out. And I have to say, I had a little bit of an identity crisis. My brand, which I didn't even think about, was just assumed from a very young age. And it took me actually several years to come up with what is it that I'm going to do that really actually still aligns to my true brand. And I stayed within healthcare, which is something that I've always been very passionate about. And another passion of mine is trying to help people solve problems. And I decided to get my MBA a few years after college, after working in a healthcare organization. And it was very important to me not only to get my MBA, which I thought would just help me make more of an impact, but it was really, really important for me to brand myself, so to speak, by also getting a master's in public health and demonstrating that, yes, I may have gone to business school, but I have a heart and I'm committed to healthcare. And after that, I actually went on a journey through consulting where I learned a lot about many different types of organizations, many different types of people. I found it very interesting, but I was missing that key component of myself, which is really wanting to help others. While in consulting, I was doing that, it felt very indirect, so to speak. And eventually, one job led to another, and I found myself really excited about coaching. and helping people in that way. And I saw it kind of similar to the physician role, where I could have a one-on-one impact to help people reach their full potential and also help develop people as leaders. So where I am today, after going through that journey, is I'm now at a place where I help physician and non-physician leaders reach their full potential while also helping to improve the patient and employee experience. And that's something that really, really excites me. And it's something that actually, in thinking about it, it's true to kind of the essence of who I was even back as a little girl. So I've mentioned the word brand. And for a lot of people, you may think, brand, I know brand in terms of consumer products, but brand as it applies to me, does that really make sense? Because it's natural for us to think of, brands like Kleenex, Pepsi, and Coke, which have been around obviously forever. And Kleenex is such a great brand that instead of saying tissue, many people just often say Kleenex. Needless to say, Apple, Amazon, and Disney speak for themselves as well. And just by looking at those logos, we have a sense of who those companies are. And really what's important to know is everybody has a brand. And a brand is really what your reputation is, how you are perceived, and what can differentiate you, or a choice that you need to make is whether or not you want to proactively manage that brand, manage how you're perceived, by others and the mark you're making in the world. So I found some examples of some what I'm calling brand extraordinaires. Needless to say, Oprah is, an icon. She is, a mega brand just alone. She is somebody who inspires people, to be the best that they can be. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, he's somebody who really, he emphasizes the importance of personal branding and what that's meant for him. And even as a child, a teenager, he developed a camp to help kids think about old things in new ways. And clearly that stuck with him, and that's really what he's all about. And he's obviously created, a whole new world through Amazon. Richard Branson, who many of you may know, he really wants to be seen as someone who's fun and loving, who's also a good leader, and someone who helps to bring out the best in others. How many of you recognize the gentleman on the top right? So that's Terence Tao, who is a well-known mathematician from Australia. And he actually is just in his 40s now, and he's regarded as one of the most brilliant mathematicians on the planet. And he's known for his ability to collaborate and bring out the best in his partners, and has really become, to mathematicians and researchers, he's become known as like the fix-it to researchers who kind of need some help, the fix-it person. And then at the bottom, does anybody recognize the woman at the bottom right? So that's Corey Bargman, and she was recently, a couple years ago, nominated or identified as the president of the Chan Zuckerberg Science Consortium. And she is a well-known neuroscientist. From an early age, her curiosity drove her to what she's been very proud of, is discovering things that no one else can discover. And Priscilla Chan has talked about her as a quote-unquote legitimate rock star. These are people who've really established themselves and have phenomenal reputations. So how can you start thinking about your brand and how you want to be perceived by others? Really, it's answering some of these key questions, which you may have heard come out in my story. What are your natural inclinations, passions, what makes you unique? What is your value? How do you want to be seen by your audience? What do you want to stick? What sets you apart? And then, it's also important to think about who is your target audience. When it comes to your brand, who is your target audience as it relates to who are the people that you're impacting? Target audience is obviously very important as you think about communicating your brand and communicating who you are and what you want to do so that you can position your branding statement accordingly. I have an example here from Oprah that gets to a lot of these questions, and she really sees herself as a teacher, as someone who inspires her students to do more than they thought they could. So she is somebody who really inspires people to be the best that they can be. And I think we've all seen that through her many different channels. So once you establish your brand, I really think that the branding yourself is key. To think about, what is your mission? What's the essence of you? And how do you want to be perceived by others? What do you want your reputation to be? Another important piece of this is to be able to tell your story, and to tell your story in a succinct way, to really link the past, what you've done in terms of work and other experiences, and how they map to where you are right now and what you're planning to do in the future. And demonstrate that, there's a method to the madness, so to speak. And many careers have, take different roads, and some people end up in things serendipitously. But there's a way to tie it all together, and while doing that, to demonstrate your passion. And then once you've really established your brand, it's important to create a pitch. And many of you have heard about probably the quote-unquote elevator pitch, which should be about 30 to 60 seconds, whatever it takes to get down. I think it's 30 floors in an elevator. And the key is the emphasis on being as concise as possible, and to be able to concisely demonstrate who you are. So what you do, what your role is, what that means, knowing your audience, what's in it for your audience, why should your audience care about what it is that you want to do, or what it is that you do, I should say, and what do you want from whoever you're talking to? Because for some of us, these conversations, while many of the elevator pitches are often pitched as something you need to know, to prepare for an interview, let's say, when you're asked the question, tell me about yourself. Or when you're riding in an elevator with, let's say, the president of the organization. But really, it's something that is good to know even at a cocktail party, at a networking event. You never know who you're going to meet and who could maybe, connect you to someone else even who could be a valuable resource for you. So it's important to think about that and to tailor your elevator pitch accordingly. And lastly, as we know, in today's day and age, social media is so powerful, and is often a way that people really network and get to know each other, especially when it comes to LinkedIn, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And it's critical to be consistent and make sure that your elevator pitch and how you want to be seen, your reputation, all comes through those other social media channels. Now, once you have thought about your brand and your elevator pitch, and you have a more clear understanding of who you truly are. A key here is, and I use the word who you truly are, it's really important to be authentic. And the authenticity, definitely comes through, and it's really a driving force. And if you're authentic and you take the time to really think about what it is, who are you, what it is that you aspire to do, and what do you need to do to get there, you're going to exude more confidence. And it's really an empowering position, and it'll help you in all the different, face-to-face settings that you'll be in. And I really see it as the fuel to help you in networking and other collaborative activities you may find yourself in. Another key component of positioning yourself for success is executive presence. And executive presence is really made up of how you act, how you speak, and how you look. And this graph is really interesting because, I guess, let me ask you your thoughts on this graph and the proportions. Do you think it's surprising, or do you think it's in line with what you would expect?
Yes. It's surprising because I think how you look matters way more than 5%.
Yeah.
It's true for, like, even if you say I'm at the airport and there's a first class upgrade available, if I'm wearing my Lululemon yoga pants, I'm less likely to get that upgrade than if I were wearing a business suit or if I were external like me.
Right, and what you're saying is the reaction that I get a lot, and honestly my reaction too when I first saw this. Anybody else? And what's interesting here is, obviously it's saying the gravitas piece, or how you act, how you behave, is the most important piece. And this piece really gets to demonstrating leadership competencies, instilling trust, or being someone that people can trust. And that's the most important thing. How you look was really seen as a filter in a way. So it's something that if it's there, it's only going to help enhance all those other things. If it's not there, then you're at a disadvantage, and it's going to be harder for those other things to shine through. So it's not saying that it's not important, which is kind of what it looks like at a first glance. What it is saying is, without it, it could derail you. And also, you should be very cognizant of the culture, because, different cultures have different expectations in terms of your appearance as well. And when it comes to executive presence, you also want to present or show up the way you would want to, based on your brand and how you want others to perceive you. So it's important to think along those lines. And how you communicate is really how you read a room, how you know your audience, how clearly you speak. That kind of stuff comes out in communication. And just to break down gravitas a little bit more, because it is, as you could see, so critical. And just, this study was done by the Center for Talent Innovation in 2012. And the study was sponsored by a number of large corporations like American Express, Gap, Deutsche Bank, Ernst & Young, across the board. And, they interviewed a lot of senior executives across the board to get to this information. So the key components of gravitas are confidence. So again, a lot of these are leadership qualities, decisiveness. So somebody who can, demonstrate you've got some teeth, you've got some, a backbone. Integrity, you do what you say you're going to do. Emotional intelligence, which, as we know, that's really the most powerful indicator of success right now. Emotional intelligence is even more important than IQ. And then your reputation. So reputation, again, getting to how others perceive you and your brand. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Sorry, I'm new to this role that you're using all the terms.
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand
Okay. Great.
because otherwise it becomes like a buzzword. I don't know how to like.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, you know, with confidence, you're demonstrating that you know what you're talking about. You feel like you've got your information together. You're poised. You know, you're not somebody who seems trepidatious, and a lot of that is demonstrated through your body language. You know, and through your tone and the way you communicate, it comes through in those ways. Decisiveness, you know, being able to make decisions, not being wishy-washy, and demonstrating that you have a backbone. Integrity, meaning that if you say you're going to do something, you follow through on it, and people know that they can count on you. The emotional intelligence piece, I mean, this is something that it's becoming more and more a part of leadership training, and it's really about understanding your own emotions and understanding the emotions of somebody else, and then being able to be mindful of your interactions with that person, and temper your emotions accordingly, and also be a little bit more strategic in how you deal with the other person based on the emotions that they're going through. Does that make sense? I mean, there's a whole course on emotional intelligence, but that's, I think, the most simple way to put it. And then your reputation is really just what others think about you, what people say, you know, when you leave the room. What are they going to say about you? Is that helpful? Okay, great. And then the other key piece, so, you know, again, assuming you have all these other pieces in place, you're now ready to go out and network. And with networking, it's important to think about a couple things. A Harvard sociologist, Robert Putnam, refers to, there's the bonding type of networking, and then the bridging type of networking. And actually, women are more likely to do well as it relates to bonding, which means networking with those who are like you, networking maybe, you know, with the people around you, the people within Mount Sinai Health System. And it's really more about a comfort level and, you know, maybe 1 degree of separation. And the bridging networking is something actually that historically men are better at doing, and it's really going outside of your comfort zone and collaborating people in other entities, and being maybe a little bit more courageous in that way. And that's really the most powerful type of networking. And many of you have probably heard about, you know, 6 degrees of separation, the Bacon and the Erdos numbers. And Erdos is you know, your degree of separation between the Hungarian mathematician in terms of your scientific papers. And the key is to really get those numbers down as low as you can, and that's really going to expand your range of opportunities. And again, networking, you know, some keys are obviously there's the face-to-face networking, and I would say, and a lot of people, you know, including myself, I had a hard time networking, especially at the beginning of my career. Networking is not easy. To go into maybe a conference where you don't know anybody, and, you know, you've got to get up the courage to initiate a conversation. And a key here is to maybe plan ahead of time. If you know that you're going to a conference, Look at who's going to attend. It's easy to figure out the speakers, maybe identify a few people that you know are going to be very helpful to you, and think about ahead of time, what is that pitch, and what is that you would like to get from that other person. And then the key to networking is also maintaining those relationships. Once you maybe share contact information, make sure that you follow up, and make sure that you continue to follow up and nurture and build on that relationship. And those networks obviously are multiplicative in that once you meet one person, they're going to introduce you to somebody else and somebody else. But it's very important to really manage your network and build that into your overall career management. As most people probably know, over 80%, I think it's between 80 and 90% of jobs are found through networking these days. And, you know, with that, as I mentioned before, social media is obviously a very powerful tool as it relates to networking. LinkedIn, we talked about, it was the most powerful for professional networking. And also, as we know, Twitter is out there. There's Google+. There are a lot of ways to get your opinions out there, maybe get followers. The key is to really be mindful of what you're putting out there, because obviously anybody can research it, and you really want to be careful. And with that, you know, Facebook, a lot of people see as something that's more personal, but as I think a lot of us know, many times recruiters are looking at Facebook as well. So you just want to be careful that you're not doing anything that could tarnish your reputation. So the key takeaways are, you know, really, as I mentioned, start with being authentic. Who are you really? Who are you aspiring to be? What is it? What is your mission in this world? Think about that, and from that, proactively manage that brand. And manage it through the way you present yourself, manage it through the way you talk about yourself, and you started conversations with others that could maybe help you, and vice versa. Something else that I didn't mention is in networking, it's very important also to think about how you can help that other person that you're networking with, and really establish, you know, a sense of reciprocity with the people that you're networking with. And, you know, again, be consistent. Think about all the ways that people are finding out about you and your reputation and what you're about. And be proactive about making personal connections. In today's day and age, it's much easier to find out who could be somebody that, you know, you could learn from, or somebody that could help you get information, or help introduce you to somebody else. So really take the time to proactively do that. And I just want to leave you with this quote, which I love. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And as my mom used to say, and I guess she still says, always be prepared to be lucky. And I really see this exercise in terms of positioning yourself for success as preparing to be lucky. Because when you are in those situations where you could be meeting somebody who could change the course of your life or help kind of take you to the next level, if you've done the preparation and the thinking in advance, you're more likely to really, you know, succeed in that opportunity and go to the places that you want to go, or maybe that you haven't even imagined you can get to. So that is it. And I think we're holding questions until the very end. All right, thank you. So Alison is going to come up now.
My name is Alison Finney, and I work with Mount Sinai Innovation Partners. For those of you who might not be as familiar with our group, we are the commercialization arm of the Icahn School of Medicine and the Mount Sinai Health System That is a lot of large words for saying that we work with faculty and scientists who invent things, create new treatments, products, services to improve the health of our community. And we work to partner those with external folks like pharmaceutical or device companies. We try to attract investment so that the great innovative work can keep going at Sinai. So that's what I do. I joined Sinai in December of last year, so I'm fairly new. Still working on my pitch for our group, so feedback is always welcome. I've had an interesting road to get here. Pitching has always been a vehicle for me to better explain why my path hasn't gone directly from A to B. So I've always enjoyed the opportunity to pitch. I started off my academic career 100% convinced I was going to be a high school gym teacher. That didn't work out. I quickly learned in my undergrad that that was no longer what I wanted to do, and I joined a neuroscience program. And then I became extremely focused on understanding neurodegenerative disease and just dove headfirst into research, and then realized that I didn't have nearly enough questions to have a life as a faculty member. So I did an MBA. Once I got out of the MBA, I thought this is perfect. Now I can combine science and business and everyone's going to want to hire me and I'll just be this unstoppable force in the universe. That wasn't also true. And it was really a great lesson in learning how to pitch because no one understood why a PhD neuroscientist did an MBA. And then when I finally convinced them why I did it, they didn't understand what to do with me. Or what I could do. So there was a lot of opportunity to craft both personal and professional pitches. In the time since I graduated, I've had a lot of great opportunities to work with entrepreneurs, to help them attract investment, great employees, to help them with their pitches. I've also gotten to judge pitch competitions, which I have to tell you is 100% easier than doing the actual pitching. And through those experiences, I've learned a few things and I'm going to share them with you today, and hopefully that will be useful for you both in pitching yourself and your career, as well as your science, your great business ideas, really anything that you're developing from a professional perspective. So Lisa talked about this a little bit. There's a number of different ways you can pitch. There's the elevator pitch, which is really popular. There's pitching to your boss or your supervisor, presenting in a meeting to a team, presenting new projects. My favorite is the one on the bottom, chasing someone to their car. I haven't done that one yet, but I imagine that might be a little bit shorter than an elevator pitch, depending on how well they like that approach. But really, every pitch is going to include similar information. It's just about how you execute and how you communicate that. So one of the most challenging parts of pitching is that first impressions really dictate how the rest of the pitch is going to go. And it takes about 1/10 of a second for us to make judgments about other people. We make judgments on attractiveness, competency, trustworthiness in 1/10 of a second. So you have all already decided whether you believe anything I'm saying or not. I've decided from the people I've made eye contact with who's actually paying attention, who's actually interested in here. We're really making really snap judgments about each other. So that means that all the content, all the preparation that you put into what you're actually going to tell somebody is going to be heavily affected by that first 1/10 of a second. So something to keep in mind. Now a question for you all. How long do you think the average human attention span is? Anybody else? Well, you're not far off, actually. Microsoft did a study, and they looked at about 2,000 subjects. They looked at some EEG and some sustained attention studies, and they found that the average human attention span in the year 2000 was 12 seconds. They repeated the study in 2013 and found that it had decreased to 8 seconds. So we're about 1 second less than a goldfish, which means anything that I present to you, I'm not even sure you're paying attention all the way through the slide. So if you think we've made our first impressions in the first 1/10 of a second, and then the average human attention span is about 8 seconds, there's not a lot of time to get your message across. There's not a lot of time to engage someone, excite them, anything you're attempting to do with the information you're sharing. So I think that the majority of advice that I can give people about presentations or pitches is to know your audience. I've seen scientists go in to pitch business people with great scientific pitches, and business people, it's not that pitch, that speech, that presentation is not including the pieces of information they need. It's a great presentation, fabulous, but it's not geared towards the audience. So you always want to make sure that you know who your audience is. It matters, what do they need or want? Like, why are they listening to you? And so you can focus on the things that are value drivers for them. What might you have in common? Finding common ground is going to increase the amount of attention someone's going to pay to you. You've got that first 8 seconds to connect with someone, to engage with them. Tell them something that is important to you, that could be important to them. It's a great way to get people to pay attention for longer. It's a great way to get people to buy into what you're doing. And it's a great way to get some sort of outcome. Because the sole most important thing that you have to remember when you're pitching is, what are you asking for? You're always asking for something. You're not just talking to someone for the sake of talking. Do you want feedback and advice? Do you want to grow your network? Do you want money? Do you want a job? Do you want to hire someone? There's always a reason that you're going to be giving a pitch, and it's important that you know that you gear the content that you share towards that, and that you make it easy for the person you're talking to know that as well. People love to be helpful. They want to know how can they be involved. If it's a conversation, they want to have a back and forth. If it's a problem to solve, they want to know there's a piece of that problem they can engage with or they can add value to. So I was introduced to this idea of the golden circle, a fantastic gentleman named Simon Sinek. He's a motivational speaker and a strategist. And I was introduced to this in grad school when I was struggling to explain to people why I did what I did and what I thought I could do with all of my years of training. And the goal of this sort of method of organizing your thoughts is to really start with why, and start with what drives you and your passion, and engage people on a very basic level, which is there's something that excites you and that's why you do it. So the reason to start with why is to explain things like, why are you doing it? Why hasn't it been done before? Why should someone care? If you start at this level, say you're working in Alzheimer's research. You want to cure Alzheimer's disease. Why? Do you have a family member? Have you had a personal experience? Do you just think it's a devastating disease that's impacting society? Those are all things most of us in the room can agree on. Those are really basic points that can help engage and incorporate your audience. How do you do that? So once you tell someone why you're passionate about something or why something is important to you, how do you execute on that? If you're interested in curing Alzheimer's disease, do you do drug development? Are you a clinician? Are you a person with the disease who's participating in research? There's all these different ways that you can achieve a goal, and it's important to really explain to someone, how are you doing that? And then finally, what's the product or outcome of your work? So I'm passionate about something. Here's how I do it, and here's what the outcome is. And these are 3 really quick ways to give someone an idea and an overview of who you are, what drives you, what your science is, what your business idea is. It's just a great way to incorporate briefly and concisely what you're about. You can have a broader conversation with people. You can go on to larger and longer presentations, but these 3 pieces of information are really going to get the point across to others about who you are and why you do what you do. So a great example, building on the idea of well-characterized brands, is Apple. If you go on their website, if you read about their products, you're going to see a lot of lofty, make the world a better place statements. They believe in challenging the status quo and doing things differently. That's a great thing. Who doesn't believe in challenging the status quo? Who doesn't want to do things differently? How do they do that? They make beautiful products that are easy to use. Great. What do they really do? They make computers. But there they've built a story. They've built a dialogue that you can move along with, that can engage you, because who doesn't like beautiful things that are easy to use? Another example that might be a little bit more relevant from the science and clinical aspect is Mount Sinai Innovation Partners. So as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought, how would I present Mount Sinai using this model? If I had a few seconds to convince you that Mount Sinai Innovation Partners is a group of great people doing great things and you should want to hear more. The why of Mount Sinai Innovation Partners is to bridge the gap between bench and bedside. I think all of us in this room can agree that there's a lot of great academic and clinical research that goes on, and that we're all here working towards the goal of applying that great work to improve the lives of patients in society. How does our office do that? We do that by supporting commercialization of academic research, creating partnerships with external parties. What does that actually mean? We execute licenses, we draft contracts, we raise capital. And so that's a really quick overview of what we do. And usually that's enough to help engage in a conversation and engage in a dialogue with others. Now, I don't want to do all the talking. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, if there's one person beside you, or you can even do it by yourself, think about how would you pitch yourself? How would you pitch your work using this model? What is your why? How do you do it? And what is the outcome? And I just want you guys to take a few minutes to think about that, because it's one thing to listen to folks talk about how to pitch. It's one thing to read about lists of things to include and what not to include. But in my personal experience, the best and only thing that's ever worked is practice and really conceptualizing. What do I want to tell people about myself? How do I want to pitch myself, the work I'm doing, my next big idea, and how am I going to engage others through that pitch? So if you want to just take a minute in groups of 2 or more and think about, what's your why statement? How do you do that? And what's the outcome? Don't be shy. Everybody's got one. All right, so it sounds like we have a lot of great conversation out there. Do we have any volunteers who want to give their why, how, what pitch? Any volunteers? I heard some really good ones. All right, if no one wants to do it, well, I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. How did you find presenting or sort of pitching or starting a conversation with why? Is that different from how you normally talk about your work? Anyone? Does anyone else start with what? Yeah. All right. Was it harder? Exactly.
Can you please repeat what the people are saying?
My apologies. The comment there was the what is kind of the easier piece. We know what we do. We mostly know how, but the why can be challenging, while others thought the why was the easiest question to answer.
Strange way for you to start a conversation.
So the comment from the crowd was around emotional intelligence, and starting with why being a very emotional and a very personal way to start a conversation, but also potentially very engaging, because many of us have very personal, passionate driving forces in why we're here, especially when you think of research, clinical practice. These are often people are in these fields not because they pay extremely well, but because they help us answer questions, they help us do the things that we want to do and have the impact we want to have. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about this method of pitching yourself? Does anybody just hate it? Never going to start with why, only going to tell people what they do and that's it?
But if you feel a little vulnerable, you're starting with why, maybe people will judge you negatively based on your motivations.
So there could be a vulnerability with starting with why, an opportunity for people to criticize or judge based on motivations. There could, but I think that everyone has something that motivates them. It might not be the same thing, but at its core, if it's something that excites or drives you, that's a basic way to engage with others, because everyone is excited and driven by something. Might not be the same thing. They might not be things we understand about each other, but that energy, that look in your eye, that excitement as you speak about what you do on a basic level is going to engage other people. It's hard to listen to someone who's extremely passionate about what they do and not get a little excited. You might not understand what they do, but you can associate with that sense of excitement, that perspective that they're coming from. Any other questions about this pitching, about pitching your science? I think we can probably bring Lisa back up here and then look at questions overall about pitching, both personally or professionally. Yep.
First, thank you for an excellent presentation. I feel like I've been to a couple of these sorts in my years, and I always learn something new. One topic that was interesting and new to me was they gave executive presence. And my question is in regards to how we can assess this. I think we're all sort of been trying to build this and a little bit haphazard here and there and trying to be more confident and all that. But how can we get a true sense of how we're coming across? Is it through personal interviews with your circle, or how can we assess your executive presence?
So the
Great
question is about assessing executive presence and how to develop those skills and what is best to improve those skills.
Yeah, really, how do you get feedback on how you're doing? So, great question. And it would be good if you could enlist some people that you trust. You know, it could be ideally a mentor, someone in your personal circle, a family member, someone, you know, who's a peer, just somebody who you think could be that person, or a group of people that could help you see how you're coming across. Or even, I would say, bring it up with your manager, just to get some feedback, check in on it. And if you're asking the question, you know, hopefully you'll get honest feedback.
What are some of your recommendations for staying in touch with the
So the next question is, what are your recommendations for staying in touch with the people that you know? I would say ideally keep a database of the people in your network, and maybe even prioritize them in terms of those that are in your core network and those that are more in the periphery, and do things like send holiday emails, or, you know, if you remember their birthday, do different things like that just to kind of keep yourself in their, you know, mind, on their radar, so to speak. And then invite people to coffee, you know, to just check in. And I would say, so if you keep a spreadsheet, you can keep track of, you know, the person, what the person's role is, a sense of maybe some even personal information that can really help to develop the relationship, and, you know, where things left off. And also be proactive, as I mentioned before, in terms of thinking about how you may be able to help those people as well. You know, maybe even send them an article that you think may be of interest.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I've bounced around cities a ton, so a lot of the people in my network are not local. I can't just meet them for coffee. So often I'll send an article, flag a news item. If I'm going to a conference or event, I'll ask if they're going to be there and do they want to get together. In the scientific community, it's a great one because everyone's always going to conferences, in the clinical community as well. I think things like if you're looking for a job and see things that you're interested in, but you want feedback, I've sent people, hey, what do you think about this role? Do you know anything about this company? I'd love your feedback. So just simple questions for people to answer, easy ways for them to engage with you, and keep you sort of in their mind when it comes to opportunities, in their mind when it comes to, you know, what it is you do. Also, honestly, LinkedIn is, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest and easiest cheat for keeping in touch with your network, because you can forward people articles, or you can see what they're interested, what they're reading, what they're posting, from a professional perspective, and understand how better to engage with them. So.
I have a question about the previous question in terms of, let's say you can get feedback, but it's not feedback you wanted, or it's in different ways, like you have an unexpected success or an unexpected failure. So, like if you're pitching Amazon, it's like it's easy. You click things and you get them right away, and somebody says, well, I don't really like Amazon for that. I like Amazon because I can price comparison. And this goes positive, but not on your message. Or negative, somebody says, well, all the things that I can get on Amazon, I can pick up at the corner store. All the things that I can't get on Amazon, I wouldn't want to go there anyway. So how do you respond, like, with personal feedback like that? How do you stay consistent and do all the things we're talking about, but, you know, respond to feedback different than what you kind of were looking for?
So the question is, how do you respond to maybe unexpected feedback, feedback that could be contrary to what you think, or to contrary pieces of feedback from other people?
Yeah, and it seems like you're talking about it from both personal feedback as well as based on how you're branding yourself and or whatever it may be, like Amazon is, how they brand their company. I would say you should stay true to your brand, and think about, is this feedback that's going to enhance my brand, or is this feedback that's kind of going to derail my brand? Because some of the feedback you mentioned with Amazon, they may say, okay, that's what that person thinks, but the majority of our market thinks otherwise. You know what I mean? So I hate to say it depends, but I'm thinking you kind of have to filter where the feedback's coming from. Obviously, it's important to get all the feedback and hear the different perspectives, but then, you have to kind of figure out the best way to use or not use the feedback based on if it's going to help you get to where you want to be. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
I've received a lot of contrary feedback in my life, and I think that, like this gentleman in the front mentioned, you're going to get a lot of feedback, a lot of information from your environment, and basically you have to determine what pieces of it you're going to keep and use and what pieces you're going to reject, and that's an experience game and it's an exposure game, and that's why, similar to Lisa's message, if you understand what you do, why you do it, and how you do it, you get a sense of confidence and a consistency in that, and you don't have to be all things to all people. And one thing about branding is it's a positive way to express yourself, but it also restricts you because it sets parameters around who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we each have different skill sets, and to truly know yours is a very confidence building and a very strength building piece. And to truly know what you're not great at is not a weakness, that's a strength as well. So there could be opportunities that you haven't addressed, and feedback is, what about those opportunities? Well, you can only do so many things. So I think it's really about balance, about knowing what your core strengths are and what you want to do, and then really balancing the sources and types of feedback you get to accent and strengthen that vision.
And I would say feedback is so incredibly powerful, and it's really important to be open to the constructive feedback, and really think about it, listen to it, absorb it, before making any, quick judgments about whether or not you're going to use it or not, because most likely that feedback, as they say, feedback is a gift, so to speak, but most likely it could really help to bring you to another level. And even the understanding that somebody thinks that way could help position you better in the future.
So out of respect for time, I see we're at 9 o'clock. So I think we'll wrap up, but I can stay for a few minutes. I don't know if Lisa can. If there's any other questions. The team who organized this, we'd like to thank you so much for having us. And they have our contact information as well. So if there's anything you want to reach out to post this session, please do. We're happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.